He believed he could tame a lion, feed it, he should control it, and make it his pet. In the quiet city of Kufa, Iraq, a man made a fatal mistake. He believed heckled tame a lion just days after buying it, but on a warm morning in May 2025, that lion turned on him and tearing through his neck and chest, refusing to let go. By the time help arrived, it was too late. He was already partially devoured in the same garden where he thought he could build trust with a predator. Keep watching. We've uncovered real-life tragedies you need to hear about. His name was Aqil Fakhr, a lean 50-year-old man known for keeping exotic animals, but this time the wild didn't bend to his will. It reminded everyone watching, lions do not forget what they are, and nature does not negotiate. This is the terrifying true story of the horrifying last moments of lion owner Aqil Fakhr in Iraq. Welcome to the Animal Quest channel. If you care about the truth behind real animal attack stories, make sure to subscribe, like and share, so more people learn what happens when the line between man and beast is crossed. Now this is how it all started. His name was Aqil Fakhr, a 50-year-old man who lived in Kufa, historic city in southern Iraq, known more for its mosques and quiet streets than for exotic animals. But behind through walls of his garden compound, Aqil was a building something different. He wasn't just a collector, he was an enthusiast, a man drawn to danger like a moth to flame. Over the years, neighbors had seen glimpses of the unusual: a pair of monkeys chattering from a cage, a python slithering along reinforced glass andirons, a hawk tethered to a wooden post, staring with razor eyes in a town where livestock and stray dogs were common. Aqil stood apart. Some said he had we believed he had connections, but what no one doubted was his obsession with wild animals. The more untamed Thibata, those who lived nearby had long whispered about the roars that echoed from his property late into the night. Most dismissed it after all this was Aqil, quiet, private, intense, but no one asked too many questions, not when the man behind the gate seemed to always know exactly what he was doing. That is until the day he brought home a lion in the first week of May 2025 under the son of Kufa. Aqil Fakhr made a decision that would seal his fate after years of collecting exotic animals, creatures that most people only ever see behind bulletproof glass. Aqil crusade a new lion. He brought home a lion, not a cub, not a sick or sedated rescue, a young adult male, powerful and restless, still pulsing with the instinct to hunt. The animal arrived in the early morning, delivered by a contact whose name was never revealed. The exchange was fast, quiet, as if they both knew this wasn't something that could be discussed openly. Inside his garden compound, already homoto monkeys, birds and reptiles. Aqil had prepared a cage, thick metal bars, welded corners, a locked gate. To anyone else it might have looked secure, but lions don't measure cages, they measure fear. The enclosure sat adjacent to his other animals like it was just another exhibit, an addition to a private collection that was never meant to exist. Aqil watched the lion pace, admired its muscles, its calm fury. He believed heckled tame it, feed it, teach it, control it. Maybe in his mind it would even trust him. But what he didn't realize, what so many before him have failed to understand, is that a cage and confidence are never enough, because wild instincts may sleep for a while, but they never die. As the days passed, in early May 2025, something began to shift in the quiet neighborhood of Al Jamia district in Kafat. First it was just the sound, guttural roars that rolled over thralls of Aqil Fakhr's compound. Distant thunder at night. The roars grew louder. Mothers pulled their children indoors. Doors were locked. Conversations among neighbors grew tense. Many already knew about Aqil's unusual obsession with wild animals. But this was different. This a monkey shrieking or a snake rustling in glass. This was the voice of a predator, according to a source who spoke to Al-Gat newspaper. The lion appeared visibly agitated. It paced in its enclosure non-stop, its movements restless and sharp, like some to be unleashed. Some claimed it wasn't being fed properly, others said it was too confined, its instincts pressing hard against steel bars and concrete floors. Whispers of concern turned into murmurs of fear. One man told local media he had considered reporting Thelian but chose not to, out of respect, or perhaps out of fear. After all, Aqil Fakhr wasn't a man many questioned. He seemed to walk with the quiet confidence of some man who thought he knew better than nature itself, and when people warned him, didn't listen, because to Aqil Vislian wasn't a threat, it was a trophy, a symbol, a challenge. One he believed heckled master, but behind the iron-bossed lion was already changing. Each hour it grew more anxious, more aware, more dangerous, and soon the cage wouldn't be enough. It was Friday morning, May 9, 2025. The sun had just begun to rise over Kafo, casting long shadows across the quiet streets of the Al Jamia district. Bird chirped faintly in the distance from most of the city. It was just another peaceful start to the day, but inside any particular walled compound something far more dangerous stirred. At approximately 7:30 a.m. Aqil Fakhr, dressed in a plain shirt and light trousers, walked into the heart of his garden. He was alone, no assistants, no tranquilizers, no emergency protocols, just him and Thelian. He carried no tools, no barriers. According to one neighbor, he believed that the lion would respond to dominance, that if he showed fearlessness, the animal would respect him. It wasn't the first time Aqil had entered the enclosure, but it would be the last. The lion was standing when he approached, its golden fur catching The morning light ice-locked on his every step. Perhaps Aqil thought it was calm, perhaps he believed that the bond he imagined was real, but lions didn't measure history, they measure opportunity. And that morning the cage door opened and the lion took it. In a flash of muscle and instinct, the beast lunged forward with a force that shattered the silence. The first bite landed at Aqil's throat, crushing soft tissue and silencing any command he might have tried to give. Then came that claws ripping into his chest, shoulder, and abdomen, dragging him to the dirt. He tried to scream. A choked, desperate cry showed across the compound walls. But he knew that neighbors would later say he thought someone was being murdered. In truth, they weren't wrong. The lion hesitated, pinned him down with the weight of its full body, teeth clamped into bone, tearing into the mud well. Just moments before had stood over it with the confidence of a tamer, but Aqil was no longer in control. He was freed by the time the first neighbor. The gate, the garden, was a scene of horror. Aqil's body was motionless, his upper torso torn and bloodied pieces off, his clothing shredded and stained. The lion crouched over him, breathing heavily, still guarding its kill. It hadn't just attacked him. It had partially devoured him, and it wasn't done even after the gunshots came. Even after Heartwarming stopped, the silence that followed wasn't peace, it was the terrifying realization that no one, not Aqil, not his neighbors, not his city, had ever truly understood what they were dealing with. The cage had opened and Thule had done what it always does. It took back control. Screams tore through the still air of Kufa's Alger district. Like a warning siren, no one could ignore one neighbor. The sound as inhuman, a mixture of agony and terror that made his blood run cold within moments. People from nearby homes were pouring into their narrow street, unsure of what they were hearing, unsure of what they were about to see. Then someone shouted, "It's Thelian! Aqil the lion's got him!" Panic set in. The gates to the compound had been left unlocked, perhaps in the chaos, perhaps because Aqil had never imagined it'd need them closed. A man, reportedly a relative of Aqil, burst through the entrance and sprinted across the garden. What he saw stopped him cold. The lion, massive, blood-slicked and heaving, stood hunched over Aqil's body, its jaw still clamped around the lifeless man's torso. Aqil was unrecognizable. His neck turned open, his chest caved in. The garden was soaked in blood, but the lion wasn't snarling, it wasn't pacing, it was still as if it were guarding its meal. The man didn't hesitate. He raised the weapon in his hands, a Kalashnikov rifle likely kept in the house for emergencies, and took aim. He fired once, then again. 8 of 7 rounds exploded into Thelian's body. The beast roared once and collapsed beside Aqil, its head hitting the earth with a dull thud. But even in death it wouldn't let go. Its body remained curled against Aqil's massive paws, still draped over the man's shredded remains. It was as though some primal instinct refused to release that claim. Minutes later, emergency responders arrived, too late for anything. Aqil's remains were loaded into a body bag and transported to Tulsa Medical City Hospital in Yaf, where officials could barely believe what they were seeing. And there, lying in a pool of blood surrounded by twisted cages and broken silence, was the lion, lifeless, but still a symbol of everything Aqil thought he could and didn't. Inside the hospital's morgue, doctors confirmed what everyone already feared. Aqil had suffered catastrophic injuries to the neck and chest. His body had been partially consumed. The lion had not just killed him, it had fed on him. That shocking fact would echo across newsrooms and households for days. Local law enforcement immediately launched an investigation, not just into the attic but into how such a creature had ended up in a residential garden in the first place. Where did the lion come from? Who sold it to him? Was it registered, tracked, and monitored? The early answers were as troubling as the attack itself. Aqil had acquired the lion through unofficial channels, likely bypassing legal permits and animal welfare regulations. There were no safety measures, no veterinary versed, just a cage and a dangerous scene of control. And so what began as a personal tragedy quickly escalated into a national wake-up call. An investigator speaking anonymously told a local station this wasn't an accident, this was a disaster waiting to happen. In the days that followed, the Iraqi answers: how did this man in Aqiyat, part of Kufa, gain access to a fully grown lion? Why were there no inspections, no accountability, and how many others might be hiding wild predators behind garden walls just like it did? Because Aqil's death was no longer just a story of one man in Onelian, it was now a mirror held up to a system that had looked away for far too long, and for the first time, no one could look away anymore ever. Blood hadn't yet dried in the garden of Alger district when the first video began to circulate. A shaky recording taken from a neighbor's phone showed a blurred image of the lion's lifeless body sprawled in the dirt around it, pools of blood, twisted fencing, unmistakable outlines of other cages. The footage hit the internet before authorities could contain the scene, and once it was out there was no turning back. Within hours, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok were flooded with reposts, some in shock, some in anger, many unable to believe what they were seeing. We was a full-grown lion kept in Somian's backyard. This was murder on both sides. The lion paid for a human arrogance. The hashtags began to trend: "Ina justice for the lion, -ban, exit tickets, Aqil Fakhr den," and then came the outrage, not just from Iraq but from around the world. Animal rights organizations condemned the situation, claiming it a textbook case of human recklessness leading to avoidable death. Others pointed fingers at the government. We were there, no checks. How did a man with a known history of Owning wild animals gain access to a lion without oversight, without regulation, without conceit. Some tried to defend Aqil, claiming he had only ever loved animal stat. He wasn't a monster, but the overwhelming majority asked a more urgent question. How many more Aqiles are out there? Debate ignited in Kaifi's classrooms and newsrooms. Should exotic animal ownership be regulated more natally or banned altogether? Because, in the eyes of the public, this wasn't just about one man's death, it was about the ghost of pride, the illusion of control, and a line that never should have been there in the first place. What happened at Din Kufa was no longer just local news. It had become a global reckoning in the days that followed Aqil Fakhr's death. As the footage continued to circle the world, experts began stepping forward. Wildlife specialists Ula Josto and conservationists Manyov, whom had been warning of cases like this for years, now had the world sat in interviews with Shafik Nus and Rudolph. Their message was clear: lions are apex predators, not companions. You cannot tame what has evolved to kill thee. Describe the lion as a creature designed by nature for one thing: survival through dominance, strength, aggression. No amount of affection or familiarity could erase what was hardwired into its blood, and this, they said, was not the first time tragedy had followed arrogance. They pointed to the 2020 incident in South Africa where a private owner was killed while feeding his captive lions, or the 2018 case in Czech Republic where a man raised a lion from birth only to be mauled and killed in his own backyard, or even earlier in the United States, where exotic pet owners faced fatal encounters with tigers, lions, and other large cats in enclosures too small to contain their instincts. In every story, Thepatin was the same: a person convinced that he could bond with something built forth wild, and a predator that didn't understand sentiment, only dominance and survival. Aqil's death, they warned, was not a freak accident. It was a certainty moment. He opened that cage door. That countdown began. As one expert put it bluntly, this wasn't just a fluke. It was a ticking time bomb that finally exploded, and tragically Aqil wasn't the only one standing too close to Thiblis. What happened in Kufa was horrifying, but it was not unique. Just weeks earlier, in the rural outskirts of Nairobi, Kenya, a 14-year-old girl was asleep in her family's modest home when a lion escaped from Nairobi National Park. It leaped a fence, crept through a residential cand, and dragged the girl outside before anyone could react. Her body was found later, shredded, lifeless, deep in the underbrush. She had no weapons, now earning no chance. A life taken in seconds, not in the wild but at home. Half a world away in India, another tragedy is unfolding at a Zoikal Park. A seasoned 52-year-old zookeeper entered alien enclosure without backup. He hadn't it many times before, but that day he made two fatal mistakes. He forgot to close the gate and he went in alone. What followed was brutal and immediate. Thilian, unprovoked, unrestrained, and dead-lipped, pounced. By the time his colleagues arrived, the man was already beyond help, and like Aqil, he had underestimated the one thing we couldn't control: instinct. These stories, though scattered across continents and cultures, form a chilling pattern, one that is hard to ignore, a pattern of humans pushing past boundaries that should never have been touched. Exotic pet ownership of in captive environments, fatal belief that dominance over nature can be earned, or worse, assumed, and when it fails violently. Thelesin isn't buried in mystery. It roars in blood and silence over and over again, because no matter how many times we think we've conquered nature, natural ways reminds us it never agreed to be conquered. In the final seconds of his life, Aqil Fakhr was face down in the dirt, his body torn open, his strength gone, on disillusion shattered. A man who once walked among wild animals with confidence now lay beneath one helpless, bleeding and dying. The lion he had fed, housed, admired, had turned on him with full force of its nature, not out of malice but because it was a lion. And lions do not make promises. Owls. Fine moments were spent in terror, at the mercy of the very creature he believed could control his screams. Once sharpened, human faded beneath the heavy breath of the predator looming over him. And when silence returned to that garden in Kufa, it came with a lesson few will forget, because this was never just a freak accident. It was the inevitable cost of ignoring nature's laws, the price of pride. The final chapter in a story written long before the cage door ever opened. This was not just a tragedy, it was a warning written in blood, broadcast to a world that continues to forget wild is not meant to be owned, and the wild never forgets what it is. As statist settles over Aqil Fakhr's garden, the cage now stands empty, no roars, no movement, just silence, and the memory of what should never have happened. Should exotic pets like lions be banned completely? Let us know what you think in the comments, and if this story made you stop and think, like, subscribe, and share for more real stories of animal encounters gone wrong, because every viewer's voice brings us closer to understanding the true cost of taming it untamable. Thanks for watching, and wait for our next